It being 7 o'clock on Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, we will begin our select board meeting. Is there anyone here for public comment? There being none, I do have one message from the Council on Aging, Executive Director Deborah Goodsell, that I'd like to read. On Monday, November 28th, the Council on Aging celebrated Clinton's oldest resident, Lois Gallagher. Lois turns 102 years old this coming Saturday, December 3rd. Lois took photos with the Boston Post cane, which is presented to the town's oldest citizen. I believe it's in one of these cabinets, I was told, but on behalf of the town, happy birthday, Lois.
Happy birthday, Lois.
All right. Review of the meeting minutes for October 19th, 2022. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve meeting minutes for October 19th, 2022, regular session, open session, and executive session / union bargaining strategy.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The third item on the agenda, we have the fiscal year 2023 tax classification public hearing. If you come to the table, Mr. Baird.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I know you've all had a chance to review the information. Hopefully that was helpful. For the last couple of years with COVID, I think I've tried to just move this along really quickly and probably haven't spent a lot of time talking about things, but if we could spend 5 or 10 minutes maybe just going through it, I think it would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I'll just go through by pages. So page 3, as you know, we're now in a 5-year cycle. We used to be in a 3-year cycle, and in a flat market, or a market that's not changing rapidly, you could kind of just coast through the 3 years, and it was pretty easy to do. Now with the 5-year cycle, the DOR is requiring that you meet the same requirements for reval every year. So if there's any variance of greater than 10% in any class, you need to look at those classes. So that's all been done.
Okay.
Let's see, page 6 and 7. Those are kind of market trends over the last 15 years or so. And page 6 gives you the numbers, but page 7 gives a nice graph that kind of shows you. The blue line is high sales volume, and the orange line is days on market. So as you can see, it's very rapid close, and that, going through 2021 is still the trend. It's a little turned down now, but it's still not dramatic, and I don't think we're going to see any dramatic changes by the end of the year. Interest rates obviously will drive that, but it's still fairly stable in Clinton. Page 8, we're just doing a comparison from 2021 to 2022 sales. That's the fiscal year. And you can see we had some, 11, 12, 13% increases across those categories. And that actually pales in comparison to what we're seeing for the next round here, actually going into 23. Page 11 is why we're here. We're going to discuss shifting the tax rate, tax burden between the classes. Page 14, the important thing to note on that slide is at the bottom, you've got the average annual increase. So that's an average over those since 1999, which is when I came here. So this is my 24th reval. And if you look up a little bit to 2022, you can see it was a fairly significant increase there. And that was due to the fact that we were unable to shift the commercial industrial base. That value did not change. There wasn't data to suggest that a change was warranted. So most of that all fell onto the residential side, and it was there were dramatic increases to the residential side. Not so much this year, fortunately. Let's see, page 15, just kind of highlighting the trends where we're going. Probably the big outlier in there is on the right-hand column at 33.9%. Those are the 4+ multifamilies. So those are the large complexes. Those had tremendous increases in value. Page 16, if you look to the right in the blue column, that's the percentage of the levy that each class would bear without any shift. So that would be a single rate, and that's what everyone would be responsible for in that category. Page 17, you can see in the first column that says levy. That's what would happen if we maintain the 1.5 shift, and that's each class would bear that amount of the tax levy. Page 18, you can see what our maximum allowable levy is at the bottom, $33,562,000. versus our actual levy, what we're proposing to finalize the recap at, is $30,614,000. So there's a substantial amount of excess levy capacity, which is a very good thing to have. On page 19, that kind of gives us an array of where we would be with the rates. The yellow indicates where we are currently at 1.5, and those will be the reflective rates for each of the classes. Page 20, we would compare last year's average tax bill, which would have been $4,898, to this year's tax bill based on a new value, an average value of $370,000. So at 150%, you'd be looking at about a $48 increase, and then you can see as you go left to right what would happen there. 21 just kind of expands that a little bit so that you are going through the different value ranges, as opposed to just saying the average. Kind of gives a little more input as to what would happen to each one of them. On 22, we're going to compare. These are actual properties, so these are not theoretical. These are actual properties. So the far left gives you the 5 different comparisons that I'm using. The first yellow column shows what they paid in taxes for 2022, and then the columns to the right indicate what they would pay this year in taxes at the selected rates. 23 is probably the most important slide for what you guys are going to consider. And it's basically going to show you the effect of going between the ranges up and down, and what happens to the residential side and what happens to the commercial and industrial side. So after all of the valuation changes have been applied, if you look at the green line, that at 150 coincidentally indicates the closest thing to a net effect of both sides of having the same increase. Doesn't always work out that way, but it did work out this year. And page 24 are some of the options to consider. So obviously, you can adopt a single tax rate. You can stay where you are at the 150, which happens to be the point of equilibrium. You can move down to 148 as recommended by the classification committee from November of 2018, or you can select any other shift in between. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Any questions from the board?
So Dave, I have a question. Obviously, the valuations of property has skyrocketed.
They have.
So even if you move, say, from 150 to 156, there really wouldn't be a tremendous change in the tax bills because of the evaluation.
Well, there would be. So if you go back to slide 23,
Yep.
you can see what happens if you were to go to 156. There'd be a $22 decrease to the residential average property, but there'd be a $395 increase to that same value property on the commercial industrial side.
Okay. But even though we're seeing an increase in the evaluation of the properties, it still wouldn't make a difference?
No, so when you look at these numbers, I've factored all of those things into the background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of math in here that's not seen.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And the tax classification committee suggests the shift of 140.48.
So the
Based on
committee
their-
had adopted the stance that it would try to reduce the shift by 2 points every year. Now, last year, we did not move, and it was my recommendation
Yeah,
not to move
I do
because of
remember
the
that.
large
Yeah.
residential increase.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah. All right, so this being a public hearing, is there anyone here that's here to speak in favor of either shift? Okay. If you would please introduce yourself when you get up to the table.
So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, town officials. For the record, my name is Roy Nascimento. I serve as the president and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce, and with me today is Travis Condon, our public affairs manager. The chamber is a membership-based, volunteer-led organization focused on advancing the communities of North Central Massachusetts. We have a dynamic program of work and an impressive record of accomplishments supporting local businesses and growing the economy. We see ourselves as a partner to the town of Clinton and the other 26 communities within North Central Massachusetts, working collectively towards the common goals of prosperity and a thriving community. We appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening on this important issue which impacts economic development and the future of this community. I would like to start by thanking this board for its work in recent years to improve the town's business climate, both for its existing businesses and for those who consider locating here. I'd also like to thank Town Administrator Michael Ward, Phil Duffy, the Director of Office and Community and Economic Development, and other town officials who've made economic development a priority. We know that you have a difficult decision to make tonight as you set the tax rates for FY 2023, and we're here today to encourage you to continue narrowing the gap between commercial, industrial, and residential with the ultimate goal of working towards a single tax rate. We believe that moving to a single tax rate is the right decision long-term for the town of Clinton. As you know, Clinton is one of the few communities remaining in Worcester County that still has a split tax rate, and other communities have recognized that the split tax system is poor public policy and negatively impacts the community. And while initially implemented in the 1980s to help residential taxpayers, it's had, we believe, an opposite effect and actually hurts the community and hurts residential residents by driving out commercial and industrial taxpayers and discouraging investment in the community. We recognize that tax rates are only one factor in an economy. Energy costs, workforce, healthcare costs, many other things also play a role, but tax rates are a powerful one and one of the few things that's within the power of the Select Board to impact. There's really nothing you can do about healthcare costs, energy costs, and so on. But adopting a more competitive tax rate and working towards a single rate is something that you can do something about tonight. And it would send a positive message to local businesses and undo a serious mistake made many years ago that has left the town of Clinton at a disadvantage. Making the commercial tax burden more competitive will better position Clinton to attract new business investment, retain existing businesses, increase tax revenues, and will send a powerful message that the town is business friendly. Communities thrive with a solid base of businesses, jobs, resources, and tax revenues, and these are the result of business-friendly policies and tax rates. Thank you again for your time this evening on this important economic development matter. We look forward to continuing the work with the town to help advance the local and regional economy. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that's here to speak in favor? Sure.
Good evening. My name is Alex Guardiola. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, here on behalf of our partner and affiliate, the Clinton Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm here this evening in support to continuing the work of narrowing the tax gap between the businesses and residents here in Clinton. We're at a critical time here in Clinton. There's an opportunity to lure new businesses here while helping retain the businesses who will call Clinton home. Since the new census numbers came out, it's abundantly clear that there are more people migrating west of the capital than ever before. Attracting new businesses to town will add to the tax base and ultimately lower taxes for both the residents and businesses by adding more to the pie. If we continue to incentivize businesses to come by having a fair and equitable tax rate, there will be more taxpayers into the system while adding more vibrancy to Clinton. When you look at neighboring communities in central Massachusetts, they continue to thrive because of the single tax rate. When a company is looking to locate to a new area, one of the first, if not the first, things they ask is, what is the municipality's tax rate? It's just common sense to be interested in doing business in a town that doesn't wipe out their bottom line because of taxes. Moreover, Clinton is in a unique position because of its accessibility. With major highways and roads easily accessible in the town, it should logically be a top location for business owners to look to. It's certainly located within an hour to hour and a half of three of the six capitals in New England, and therefore making it a place to do new business. I ask that you consider to continue narrowing the gap, keeping Clinton competitive, and make it known as a business-friendly community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor? All right, there being none, is there anyone here that is here to speak in opposition to any tax movement one way or another?
Well, as a member, I'm going to move a motion. I don't even know if there'll be a second, but because of the economy that we're in today, and because of the large number of elderly people and people who are trying to survive on a weekly basis, I'm going to move that we go to 154. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in a year's time. I mean, we go every year and we do this exercise every year. So I just think, I know that just a few months ago we got a letter from a senior citizen that was solely living on Social Security with no other means of income, trying to stay in her home. And she's just a small number of the people. We don't hear from all of them, but we certainly know the circumstances. And because of that, that's why my motion is to go to 154.
Mr. Chairman, may I just interject?
Sure.
So in the back page of your packet, just so behind the pink sheet, we should bring this up, relative to the elderly. I know the board's all aware that we do have exemptions that are available.
Yeah,
And I just want to
sure.
remind
I believe that's at
citizens-
70, right?
There's various ages now. There's
Oh,
a few
there
different-
is?
Yeah, if you look
Oh.
at it, you'll see there's some variants on there. Plus, you have the work program. So those things, just so the public is aware, there are opportunities, and they should contact our office if
Yeah.
if they're having difficulty paying their taxes. We may be able to assist them
Yeah.
in some way.
But that's also for a limited amount.
True. Yeah.
Can I, do I have to step down a second? Okay. I'm going to vacate the chair position to the vice chair, and I'm going to second that motion on the table.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Absolutely. There's a couple things that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. And part of it is there's a lot of discussion about the tax rate being tied to incentivizing businesses to come into a community. There's no data that I'm finding anywhere that supports that, okay? Especially when you look next door at Hudson. Hudson's commercial tax rate is over $30 per thousand, and that community is thriving to the point where, the town of Clinton has almost tried to kind of model the steps that they've taken. Secondly, the town of Clinton has shown we are very business friendly, okay? There's been programs through low interest rates that we've able to produce loans during difficult times. To insinuate anything other than we're not business friendly is it's unsubstantiated. When you look at the SIP revenue in the state of Massachusetts, 80% of the SIP revenue in the Commonwealth comes from communities that have a split tax code, okay? So when we say the neighbors are neighbors who have a single tax code, they don't resemble Clinton, right? When we look at whether it's Sterling, whether it's Berlin, Lancaster, they either have a very small industrial footprint, I guess, or it just doesn't compare, right? Clinton's an old mill town. And I think that when we look at the people migrating from east to west, part of it is because of the affordability of this part of the state, right? You can afford to buy a house in the town of Clinton that has a yard. We have a good school system. We have one of the best performing, one of the lowest rates of crime. All of that comes through based upon, it's affordable, right? I'll just leave it at that. But there's other things that, in reading the report that the committee put together in 2018, the tax rate was somewhere around, according to the report, around the fifth or sixth lowest factor on there. People want services, right? Anytime I talk to any businesses around town, they're looking for services, right? Very few people have ever complained to me about the taxes are unbearable in the town of Clinton, and that's why we're leaving. When we had Rotmans leave the town of Clinton, it wasn't because of the tax rate, right? They eventually, they just went out of business, right? So to see the growth on the storefronts down here on High Street, just in general, the town is thriving. And if you look at the commitment that the taxpayers have had to the commercial side of the tax rate, you know, we were over $30 at one point, now we're down to approximately $24. That shows commitment. So I take exception a little bit to, you know, insinuating that we're anything but small business friendly. With that being said, you know, we have to look at the demographics of this town, right? Almost 25% of this town is going to be of the age of 65 or older, or on disability 60 years or younger, okay? That's number one. Number two, our school system is there's approximately 50% of our student body is economically disadvantaged, okay? So when we shift the tax burden to the residential side during a time when inflation is what it is, that's not really sending a great message to the people within our community. And I think, you know, having last year taken a pause on shifting, I thought was the right idea. As you mentioned, there was a sharp increase in evaluation, and which was approximately $43,000 on the average home. Last year to this year, it's $41,000, right? So over the last 2 years, having a valuation of over $84,000, in the average tax bill increasing $520, that's impacting the populations that I'm speaking to. And then the other concern is, you know, when we look at capital projects that are coming down the way, if we're going to shift this tax burden onto the residents, when it comes time, if we need the new school, okay, now we're going to be asking them to foot even a larger bill. And I think with commercial property, I think we're committed to keeping the tax rate fair. I don't think there should be a huge split, in my opinion, but I think that for the time being, until we know how the economy is going to turn, to allow residents the opportunity to take a breath in the short term and continue reevaluating the recommendation made by the committee. And I'll leave it at that.
Any other discussion? Well, I wrote the 2018 report, so I know a little bit about it. I will acknowledge, and I think it's one of the first things we say, is that there is no direct line A to B in most cases from a tax rate to why a company comes here. My argument at the time, and what I stick with, is if just because it's fifth on the list doesn't mean it's something we shouldn't work on if we can. It's one of the things, as the gentleman said, that we actually have direct power over. And it's not an easy thing to do. We don't like raising taxes. But when we made this commitment 5 years ago, we made the commitment to do it every year because we knew it was hard, and that if we looked at it year to year, there's always a reason to pass it on to the other guy. And yeah, the rate's going down, but in equal property, the business owner is paying, I think, 170% of what the residential is. So I'm not sure I'd call that unfair, but it's certainly not welcoming. I look at what we've done over the past 5 years, knocking it down to an historic low, and sure, you might not be able to say X is a direct result of that, but it's really hard for me not to look at this town from where it was 5 years ago to storefronts at half the vacancy rate of what they were. Downtown that people are craving to be in, new businesses, people wanting to be here. I just don't know why we would change the course we're on, especially when it's the 2-point reduction would result in a tax increase that's lowest in 10 years and half of the historical average of $131. If we're not going to do it this year, then let's just forget about doing it all, because it's just lip service. And to say we're going to hit a pause, we hit a pause last year because it was $350. It was an extraordinary year after 2 extraordinary years. We're back to normal now. And I know inflation's, there's inflation for business owners too. I just don't understand why we've been on this path, why we're enjoying the success of this commitment, the sacrifice that we're making, and now we're going to turn back because I don't know why. So I'm certainly not going to vote in favor of this. I'm not sure how I make a motion as chair. Do we got to drop down to third, or can I go back to? Well, we'll have to vote this one, I guess.
So we're in the
Well, I
middle of
think the
discussion.
motion is made and
I guess-
seconded, so you have
No,
to.
I understand. I was going to try and amend this motion. Any other discussion?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'll mention, just based on the tax program for the seniors, that's open to 20 slots. And in 2024, 2025, the projected is 3,200 seniors in this community. So to say that there is a program that can help offset some of this, that's for 20 people, right? That's a minuscule amount, right? Secondly, the taxpayers voted to approve doing the renovation of High Street. That's another commitment that they've made to that downtown. And I would also...
To be clear, that came out of the landfill account.
Well,
Okay. I guess we're going to vote her. But I...
So,
I-
hold on one second. So the last piece is, I would like to, how many people are starving to get on High Street now that High Street has been renovated versus starving to get in the town of Clinton because the tax rate is so affordable? That again, I would like to see, can that be, can that be supported through data, right?
Can I just, I guess, the discussion, I mean, I think High Street, yeah, the businesses, small businesses, it's booming. But industrial business, where you're employing a lot of people, that's not happening. I mean, since I was a young child to where I am today, it's not the same town. And when you talk about industry, there was Rayovac, there was Weetabix, there was Van Brody's, Serpenauts. I mean, you could go on and on and on. Colonial Press. That's not there anymore. We're talking about a small number of where you're employing more than 50 people. And am I happy about what's happening on High Street? I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's great for the town. But I don't think we're ever going to be the industrial town that we were 50 years ago, 25 years ago. It's just not going to happen. We're more of a bedroom community. So,
I'll just
We're
add-
certainly not going to be an industrial town if we keep maxing out the tax split, as we've done for the past 25 years. Maybe we should maybe look at more of a cause and effect there than trying to, we're just flipping this around the wrong way. And with all due respect, I've heard these scare tactics for a long time. They're unfounded. Is there any other discussion?
The same can be said for the argument for going to a single tax code, so.
Yep.
Yet there's 70% of the towns in Massachusetts who have a single tax code.
And 80% of that revenue comes from split tax codes.
I just think going back to 2019 is going in the wrong direction, so I don't think I can be in favor of this.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay?
Nay.
That's 2-3? You're the chair?
Correct. Yep.
Well, take a swing here. Mr. Chair, I move that we continue the board's history of chipping away at the tax rate by setting the tax split at 1.48.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we set the tax rate, tax split at 1.50.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye. All right. There you have it.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Baird for, as always, for his work on this. For a policy wonk like me, it's tremendous reading.
Thank you.
Very comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All righty, moving on. We have a liquor license transfer public hearing for 69 Sterling Street. Good evening. If you could just introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Board. My name is Matthew Porter. I'm the attorney for Viday Krupa, Inc.
My name is Teja Ben Patel. I'm the owner of the Vadai Corp.
Very good. All right, so today we have a public hearing for this transfer. Would you like to give us a little background?
I'd be happy to.
Perfect.
So before the Board, this is the transfer of the beer and wine license, which is currently in use at 69 Sterling Street in Clinton, New Mark Variety. Along with me today is Teja Ben Patel. Ms. Patel is 100% shareholder and the president of that corporation. Also with us tonight is Hetal Ben Patel. She'd be the proposed manager on that license. So it's a fairly straightforward transfer. There's no major anticipated to the changes to the store whatsoever, no changes to the hours or the structure. Ms. Patel has significant experience in the liquor industry. She owns 3 other locations. They've had no violations at any of their locations whatsoever. Hetal Ben Patel has been working at the store since 2007. She's going to stay on board, so it should be a very smooth transition. They will have a scanning machine in place. Everybody is tip certified. All new employees would be required to be tip certified as well. There is a request for a pledge of the license to Rockland Trust, who's helping to finance the transaction as well. So with that, I can certainly answer any questions the board may have, and Ms. Patel can as well.
Any questions from the board? There being none, so being that it's a public hearing, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this transfer? There being none, is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to the transfer? There being none, we'll close that portion of it. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that we, I'm reading the wrong thing. That we approve a transfer of a wine and malt package store license from 69 Sterling Street Variety, Inc. to Veda Krupa, Inc., doing business as New Art Variety from the premises located at 69 Sterling Street in Clinton, with Heltaben, excuse my pronunciation, A. Patel as manager of record, and a pledge of license to Rockland Trust.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much. Good luck, thank you. All right, moving on. There was a request to cut the curb for 151 High Street. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Hold on one second, I jumped. We'll get to you in 1 second. Next, Eudaimonia Health, LLC Cannabis Host Community Agreement, 20 Cameron Street, if you could please come up. Just introduce yourself when you get up there, please.
Hello, good evening. Nicholas Gomes, Counsel for Eudaimonia Health, LLC, here with my colleague.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having us. My name is Sean Coleman. I'm also an attorney on behalf of Eudaimonia Health. We're here before you this evening seeking your approval for a host community agreement at 20 Cameron Street. It's the old Weetabix facility. We appeared before you in October outlining some of the changes in the law and the amendments to the HCA that we had requested. I didn't plan to go over them again this evening, but I did want to give you some background and updates on where we are, and then kind of highlight some of the economic benefits that are still available to the town, in addition to the 3% that was previously part of the HCA negotiations. So we have a little bit of an update. You know, we've previously had signed a long-term lease personally guaranteed by Dr. Frank McCormick, who's the principal and sole owner of Eudaimonia Health. That hasn't changed. We've hired a team of consultants, including Nicholas and myself as the attorneys, and have hired or about to hire a civil engineer who's going to help with the utilities and some of the egress issues that we're having at the building. And so those are some of the updates that we've had. Recently, the Boston Cannabis Board, in relation to the HCA, actually approved in lockstep with the new law their kind of boilerplate or a standard HCA, and it updated a lot of the language. We tried to track that language in our HCA. At our previous meeting, that hadn't happened yet, so that's a little bit of an update with that language. As the board is well aware, there's several economic benefits to having a business come into town. We just wanted to highlight a few of them in this particular case. Some of them have to do with kind of a human element or a personal element. You know, Dr. McCormick happens to be a veteran in addition to being a doctor, so he has a strong focus on hiring veterans and is committed to hiring veterans as part of this project and giving back to veterans groups in this community and throughout the state. Economically, as the board was just discussing before, you know, the property values would go up in this particular instance. This is not just a warehouse storing items. This would be a significant capital infusion into this facility, upgrading almost every aspect of it from the inside out. We're not tearing it down, but all of the utilities need to be upgraded and reconnected. Almost every aspect of the outside of the building needs to be monitored by security, and then the entire inside needs to be gone through and installed with some, multi-million-dollar equipment. So this is a big overhaul and a big value injection into the community, in addition to a lot of job creation that's going to take place. We expect to hire about 20 people to work at this facility when it's up and running. Really where we are at now with the project is that we've got all of our ducks in a row pretty much. We've submitted to the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, and the one hang-up is the host community agreement. So to say that the project kind of hangs in the balance when it relates to the HCA is not to overstate it. We've actually received a request for information from the CCC and responded to it. That's their method of kind of vetting all the applications. And once you go through that and you're deemed complete, you can kind of expect an approval. So that's where we're at, but the one thing that's holding up the deemed complete status is the host community agreement. So with that, we wanted to come here again to appear before the board to answer any lingering questions that you might have, highlight some of the economic benefits, and just kind of continue the dialogue so that we could hopefully move the ball forward this evening or sometime in the near future.
And if I may add to council, this is a large facility, it's a large building. The project is essentially filling this vacancy that's been there for a long time and really upgrading this property to a full and potential best use. The ownership of the organization is social equity minded. They plan to give back to the community. They have inside of their positive impact plan assistance through that social equity fund that the state has required. They're diverting money to the right places. This is an example of choosing the right community partner where a company owner could narrow their policies so that the economic benefit is staying more to the company. Here, that's not the intent of our client, and he's true in good in the nature of trying to help others in that medical aspect and using cannabis beyond just the use and benefit that people enjoy from it, but also the financial benefit. So lastly, that's how I'd like to leave it in your minds of our client, is this is a person you can trust. You're making a decision for the community and putting this trust in their hands. And this is just one small step in the process. There's going to be further vetting, local permitting, going through the state process. So it's not the end-all, be-all, but it's just a starting point for us to get moving forward. And how I see in the time where we are right now and the change in the state law has been somewhat of a shake, but we still have the road of opportunity in front of us where we can move forward, and we've crafted the host community agreement in compliance with the law, looking at other municipalities to try to make that a little bit easier. And we'd like to know any concerns, questions you may have, and if the board is inclined, a positive vote in favor of issuing a host community agreement would be appreciated by our client. Thank you.
Any questions?
Michael, we still haven't received any kind of guidance from the CCC on how to handle the impact fee? Okay.
I think the CCC has to a year to come up with regulations and further guidance. So the only thing that we can go on is language that was suggested by town council to say that we would put in the agreement that the town would recoup any costs or impacts that they have due to this facility. But he wouldn't recommend putting in the 3% like we did with other agreements. So.
Thank you.
And I can provide a little bit of background about the timing. We, through one of the consultants that the client hired, Greenlight, they were able to connect with some people at the CCC to get some idea of how often they would review something like this. Unfortunately, they don't meet very regularly, every 3 months or so. So given it's the end of the year and it might take a little while to get to the point where we have a signed agreement, we wouldn't expect them to actually review it for, maybe early 2023.
Any other questions or discussion? What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we finalize the host community agreement with Edimonia Health LLC.
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, until we get guidance from the CCC, I'm going to be a no on all the community host agreement. No offense, but in good faith, I can't sign on for something if I don't know the rules, so.
Any other discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification, the motion would be to go forward with the agreement based on the suggested language by council.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Should I amend the motion, like to add that?
No, just as long as we're clear. yeah.
Just to clarify, okay, yeah, it is, the assumption was with the draft created by the town solicitor.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions or discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, 4-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, now the curb cut request for 151 High Street. Bailey S&L LLC. If you could just introduce
Good
yourself.
evening,
Chance.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, members of the board. My name is Sean Bailey.
Robert Bailey.
Robert Bailey, here for Bailey S&L.
Very good. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're looking to do?
So what we're looking to do is to purchase 151 High Street and use that for parking for us to develop. We presently own the 79 High Street, which was the Santander Bank building. What we're looking to do is to create residential on the second and third floor, and then commercial space, including a restaurant, on the bottom floor. In order for us to do that, we need to obtain parking for the residential units. So our options on that is to either come forward to the town and ask for space in the municipal lots for those apartments, or to procure that parking ourselves. So we've entered into an agreement with the owner of 151 High Street to do that, so long as we're able to use that for parking for those tenants. So that's what we're asking for today, is a curb cut to access that lot.
Very good. So Mr. Ward had reached out to Mr. McGowan about any input, and Mr. McGowan was in favor of the curb cut, and just wanted to make the board aware that there could potentially be up to 3 parking spaces lost due to the cut on High Street.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, I know Mr. McGowan indicated, realizing that it would be difficult for the proponent to develop that parcel at the former Santander Bank without this. So it's something that he feels could be done. There would be some moving around some of the structures there, but it's something that could be done easily. I think they indicated they were going to try to do some landscape barriers to try to pretty it up again, so it's not just a stark lot there, and kind of help blend in with the downtown. And I know Mr. Duffy is here today. I don't know if he wanted to add anything. He did go down to try to measure, what the opening would be, and maybe get a take on exactly how many spaces would be affected. So I don't know if Phil had anything to add.
No, I mean,
No, that's pretty much it. 3, maybe 4 spaces.
That's what I counted.
yeah. Very good, 3 or 4 spaces. All right.
Do we lose a light or the trees?
One tree. One tree, we would have to move a bike rack.
Okay.
This is a stupid question, but why can't you go out Pierce Place?
Yeah, I was gonna
Just
ask
the
you.
angle of the road, we wouldn't be able to access the lot at that point.
Mr.
And
Chair.
I'm sorry,
Go
and
ahead.
is this at our expense or at the expense of the developer?
There's been no discussion about that with the DPW. My limited knowledge in that, usually the town would cover that curb cut. If it is something that's going to be on the developer, I think we would need to know the costs of that. Are we able to find our own subcontractors to do that? So I think that we'd be willing to work with the town on that, but I think we would need to know that.
Okay, sorry, Phil's. got his
Typically,
hand.
that's resolved during.
Phil, do you want to come up,
Stand
and
up.
just because no
Yeah.
one can hear you
Mic.
at home without, if we could just give Phil a seat so we could,
Or you could sit.
oh, there you go, better spot. Phil,
Sit over by
you
Mike.
can sit next to Michael.
Typically, the actual design of those modifications will be finalized during site plan review with the planning board. Typically, it's been the practice of the planning board over the last 20 years when there are impacts on the public ways that those costs be borne by the applicant. For instance, every time a commercial building has been built, the sidewalks and curbing in front of the building have been paid for at the expense of the contractor with their own hired subcontractors. At the expense of the proponent, they're able to hire their own contractors to do it. But that hasn't been discussed, but typically that's the form where those determinations are made.
Can you just repeat that? You say typically the developer is the one that would handle the cutting of the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
How many spots are we looking in this lot?
We have talked to our architect and engineer. He said it could accommodate up to 30 spots. I don't know if we're going to need all of those spots to do that.
Would it just be for you?
Yeah, it would just be. Yeah, it would be a sole lot for the tenants of the building.
Okay.
Both the commercial and the residential lots.
Would there be any option to have the spaces that the town lost to be recouped inside that lot, or?
I think what we're envisioning is more of a keyed lot, whether that's some sort of device that activates so it would just be for sole tenants of that building. And I think that, hopefully what we're going to, I understand the town would be concerned about losing the 3 spots. I think that the way we're thinking about it is that hopefully we're going to be bringing in a lot of new business to the town, a lot more foot traffic between the residential units that are going to be there. We're assuming we can get the parking. We're thinking we can get between 16 and 19 apartments in that. So that's going to be a lot more foot traffic to the stores and businesses on High Street. In addition to that, the restaurant is going to end up employing a lot of individuals, and they would have designated parking spots. So they're now using the municipal spots or High Street lots, High Street parking spots. So I think in the net benefit to the town is actually going to be more parking than losing those 3 spots.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
One of my issues on this that I don't have an issue is because where we're talking those lots, it's just really open property. There's no buildings right in front of it, so I think that lessens the impact of losing the spaces in that area. So,
yeah, and as Mr. Ward had said, we would be landscaping in front of the parking lot, or the parking spaces, so as to not create an eyesore, so to speak, for the town.
So just so I'm clear, because I think I misunderstood this at first. I thought you guys were looking for this spot for parking for your business, but you're using parking for a building adjacent to where the new restaurant is going to be, and then you're telling those tenants now to park in this new location here?
Yeah, so the Santander Bank building is where the residential is going to be, as well as the restaurant.
Yep.
The parking for that building is going to be at 151 High Street.
Oh, okay, so that is going to be for the restaurant as well as the residential?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
For the tenants of that, yeah.
Okay.
Not the customers, for the
Not the
employees.
customers, yes, just the people that work at the restaurant?
Yes.
And the tenants of the building?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
He's a doctor.
I don't have a problem with any of this. I losing a couple spots, it's tough, but I sometimes, can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs type of thing. I think there's a lot of benefit to having new business there, and obviously benefit to renovating that empty lot that's just been there for a while. The only thing I'm just a little I'm fine with giving the permission to cut the sidewalk, but I'm not convinced that the town should be the one that is doing that work. I figure that would be the developers to do that work. Does anyone else have any opinion on that? Or?
well, I would think that the
I would think the
DPW
same.
superintendent would basically work in unison with you guys so that, you're doing it according to what he wants done.
Yeah, and
Obviously,
as
that's... Yeah.
As mentioned earlier,
Right.
sidewalks came out very nice.
Right.
And the downtown looks very nice.
Right. I
And
mean, I
that's what we want to contribute
Right.
to that and
Yeah.
make that nice. We just wouldn't want, we would
I
want
mean,
that
I
to be all.
wouldn't envision you guys just doing what you felt you wanted to
Exactly.
do. I mean, I would think it would be a,
Yeah.
a combination of the two of you working together, the
And
town.
we
and-
have,
Yeah,
and along that point, we've spoken to Mr.
Sure.
McDown as well
Right.
and discussed the layout of that as
Right.
well.
Yeah, I think the assumption would be that the DPW would still oversee it if we did decide that, like, they weren't gonna ultimately do the work. Chris would have to oversee it and make sure it's being done properly.
Yeah, I would think that if there was any motion to be made, that that just be included as part of the stipulation upon, superintendent approval.
Yeah, I'm just curious if the rest of the board had any thoughts, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pay the trash man sidewalk. Are we going to see plans for this before or are we just going to?
We don't have any plans for it. We were looking for a cutout, not moving the light that was talked about, basically right in the middle of the lot to access that. So we don't have any site plan yet for the actual layout of the parking lot. First thing that we wanted to do is to see if we can get that, and then we would go to the next step.
So ultimately, if we approve this, it would go to the planning board. The planning board would review, approve, and then come back. Or no? No coming back.
Not to I think to the planning, but I think the board was just given the DPW commissioners to give approval for the curb cut, and then it would go through the permitting process after that, so, yeah. And I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have closed on the property yet, so I
We
think
have
you're
not,
just
no.
looking to line up these approvals in order to
purchase.
purchase the property.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
they
one
would
of the
start doing
requirements for us to do
their
that.
engineering drawings and stuff from there.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we allow permission, or I don't know how well, we can't allow permission because it still has to go to all those other boards first, so how do I word this?
Make a motion with pending
Yeah,
approval.
okay, yeah. Make a motion pending approval from all applicable boards at the town that we allow the sidewalk cutting at 151 High Street by Bailey S. and L. LLC.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Any further discussion?
If I could.
Sure. If you want to come up.
I represent the seller.
If you want to come up, just so we can, some of the viewers at home can't hear you if you're not in front of
I know. We got people watching.
I represent the seller, but I'm also a neighbor. In this block, Mary Rose, you know that this building has been underused for 40 years. Dowd Colonial Shoes, Stowers, all gone. And while there was an out-of-town owner, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened to that building. Now we have a Clinton family that has come in and has taken ownership of this in a very brief time and suddenly has presented all these plans to bring another restaurant into the town, which we need, and also to take the third floor and turn it into residential housing, which will bring life back to the downtown again. And they're following exactly what they're supposed to do under the zoning bylaw, which is to provide parking for this and not go seek a variance for the parking. They've gone out, they're committing the money and the resources to doing this. My suggestion to you is to approve the curb cut, because by approving the curb cut, they can go forward with the purchase of this property. And that curb cut, it's going to be subject to the approval of the planning board already. You don't have to make that part of this motion. Just grant the curb cut, and again, it has to be done under the rules and regulations as promulgated by the town of Clinton for the planning board to approve a site plan on this property. But I think it should be simply approve the curb cut with the idea that the planning board's going to have to follow their own regulations.
Somebody explain to me the harm in putting what I said into the motion, though. I'm just not following.
It's simply going to put off the transaction for another 3 months, I think, something like that.
But even if we made the motion and said we approved it, it's known that it's not approved until those boards approve it.
But they can go forward with their purchase, because part of the agreement is the curb cut has to be approved.
So they can't get their financing until
They
we
can't do
approve it.
anything.
Okay.
We simply want to proceed, I
Right.
believe they'd like to proceed with developing the site.
Yeah.
And they're kind of handcuffed
Into the
if it's going to be subject to approval of all the boards down the road.
But
So much.
it was approved based upon, I mean,
I don't care, I'll amend the motion,
Go for
it
it.
doesn't matter,
Go
it's-
for it.
it has to get approved anyway, it's not
Yeah.
gonna get financing, they're not gonna be able to skirt the boards, they're gonna have to get the permission anyway, so I'd like to make a motion to amend my original motion.
Or just withdraw it.
Or can I do that? We've never done that before, we usually always do these amendments.
Go withdraw it, just withdraw it.
I would like to
Start fresh.
withdraw my motion.
I'll second it.
All right.
We have to vote to withdraw.
I'll make a motion that we grant them the permission to do the curb cut.
Second.
All right, second, any discussion? There being none, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you,
Welcome.
thank you.
What do we do with liquor license? Do we
I
ever get
know,
that
I
done?
know. Where's-
Hold on, it's not on the agenda. Don't veer from the agenda, let's go. All right, moving on. Dr. Meyer, a middle school building project update. We might have to have Dr. Meyer show up to more of our meetings to help
I know, right? He helped me
fill in
get,
some blanks.
he helped me open the door to get in the building.
Smoke coming out.
I apologize for the quality of this. Our good copier was not doing well. So, just wanted to come by and give you an update on where the Clinton Middle School building project is. We are continuing to work with the MSBA. I think one of the last updates, we talked about the OPM, but we have hired an owner's project manager. We're working with Doran Whittier. And we're still in the phase, it's called sort of building the team. So what we're trying to do right now is hire a designer or architect type firm. And what they'll do is now, once they're on board, we'll start really gathering more input, really putting together a vision of what we want to accomplish through this project, and looking at different things like, what's the cost of the town if we do nothing? What's the cost for like a renovation? What's the cost for a new building? What are options for a new building? Would it be, where would it go? Those types of things. So we did we solicited bids for the designer services, or the OPM did, and we had a meeting with the MSBA designer selection panel. Was this yesterday, right? Yesterday. And so we had six firms that applied, and the MSBA was happy with all our applications. They said that 6 actually is a lot right now. A lot of projects are coming in with just about three firms that are expressing interest. So what I've given you tonight, this packet, there are 3. Every submission is like a big book like this, and they have everything in there from everyone's qualifications, relevant progress, financial information, all that kind of stuff. But really at the end of it, they're allowed 3 double-sided pages or 6 pages where they really kind of talk about your project specifically. So what I've done is I've taken the 3 firms that were moved forward as finalists from the designer review panel. That's Lemro Pagano Associates, Feingold Alexander, and Flansburgh. And I've taken their 6 pages, and I've just kind of given you these packets. So the first, 3 double-sided pages in here are the Lemro Pagano, then you get to the Feingold Alexander pages, and then you get to the Flansburgh pages. So, and it's just, the reason I share it with you, it's really just thoughts, right? It's these companies' preliminary thoughts, and I know, I apologize I didn't copy it as well. There's a lot of the diagrams that are kind of neat, but a lot of the detail is lost. But it kind of walks through some of the idea of what's going to happen too. We start talking about things like the visioning and community outreach and those types of things. So once we get the architect on board, which should happen hopefully by January. So our next step is in 2 weeks from yesterday, we have another meeting with the MSBA to interview these 3 finalists. From there, they would rank them, and we would begin contract negotiations with the in order of the ranking. Hopefully, if we can get with the top ranked firm, then that's what we go with. And then once we have our next building committee meeting scheduled for, so those interviews are December 13th. We have a building committee meeting scheduled for December 20th. Hopefully at that point, we would be executing a contract that's been negotiated. And then in January, we'd have a building committee meeting with a design team would come out and meet with the building committee, and we would start talking about the process from there. And really starting to work on, they would start really fine tuning from our previous RFPs and the educational programming document we're working on to start really trying to figure out what is the vision of the building, what do we want to accomplish in this project. And they'll do that through different forms of community outreach, focus groups, and those types of things, once they do that. And then they'll try to, like I said, they'll look at those different options, as far as how can we try to accomplish that vision through a renovation? How can we accomplish that vision through a new building? How can we accomplish it, does it need to go over here? Does it need to go over there? And then the goal would be that we would eventually be able to look at those options and come up with a preferred schematic design. We would get that approved by the MSBA, and then that would have to go to a town vote. The timeline for that is really the goal would be architect comes on board January of 20. What year are we in right now?
23.
22 still? I get all screwed up with my fiscal years. January of 2023. So then June of 23, we wouldn't be doing anything. It would be the town meeting in June of 2024 that we'd be hoping to bring a vote to the town to say, this, through all the process that we've done now, this is sort of the preferred solution. This has got the blessing from the MSBA. They'll fund the project. Is the town willing to fund their piece of the project? That we would go from there. So we're looking at about a year and a half from now to try to hopefully have a preferred schematic approved by the MSBA and brought to the town for a decision. And then once if that were to get approved, then it's just how fast can we build it. So that's where we are. Like I said, it's just a little update. I don't, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with it. It's not really a super public thing right now, but I think it'll get a little bit more publicity once we get the designer on board and they start soliciting more input. Mm-hmm. And I thought by sharing these pages, if you want to, you can look through it, and it might give you a little sense of the understanding that there is going to be a process coming up where we are going to try to get that input, develop that vision, and try to figure out what's the smart move for the town as far as how can we accomplish our educational goals, maybe at the same time accomplish some, tackle some areas of concern town-wide, and what's the best way to do that? Is it, adding on to the existing building? Or is it building a new building altogether? So I think that's where we are. I know Mr. Ward's been involved he's on the building committee. He was also one of the 3 town representatives at the selection panel meeting yesterday. So I don't know, did I mess anything up?
No, you did a good job, as you did yesterday as well, representing the district. But I think the key takeaway that I think Dr. Meyer indicated is that it will be a very open, transparent, public process, that they want to get the input from the community so that we can set a vision that A, is going to be sustain the education goals in the future, but also B, to get support from the community for whatever project goes forward. So ultimately, the townspeople are going to have to approve a debt exclusion and payment to funding to go forward. So you need to get that out to the community so the project reflects what people want in the buildings. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of work over the next year or so, year and a half, but hopefully it'll get to where we need to be.
Doctor, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
When you're going through this process, you're going to go through to see whether you want to build on to the existing school or you're building a brand new school. So this is the duty of the building committee, I take, right?
Yeah, it's called the feasibility study.
Right. So when you decide amongst yourself, now, when it goes to the state, does the state have to see both of the proposed, like whether you're going to rehab the existing building or build a new one? Do you have to show them both those plans, or do you just come with the plan that you decided on? whether it's to build a new school or,
I
I'm
believe-
just to understand the process.
Yeah, I believe what we do is we put forth our preferred schematic.
Okay,
And then, as long as the MSBA approves of our preferred schematic, then we're fine.
Okay.
They just want to get, they just want to have some checks and balances in there, If we're saying, hey, we're building a middle school and secretly we put together a schematic that's like a high school and we're like, hey, we're just going to switch everybody. They want to make sure we're not doing anything like that. So
okay.
there's goals that were set out, there's things that they agreed to fund. Once we do our process and we say this is the schematic that we'd like to go through, then they're going to look at it, and as long as it's, kind of fits the project, then typically they would approve it. And our OPM, our owner's project manager, they'll work with, they're in contact with the MSB a lot. So I'm sure before we ever get to that process, there's going to be a lot of, before we get to that final decision, it's going to be a lot of back and forth on, is this okay or not? So, and then, the MSBA has a lot of guidelines on what it reimburses and what it doesn't. So there are certain things that the MSBA is going to be concerned about, and there are other things that we might include in a schematic that they might say, that's fine if you move forward with it. You just understand that those aren't going to be reimbursable costs. You know what I mean? And
Sure, sure.
And that might be things that we decide. If we decided that we wanted to make sure there was more, community type space so that, everyone could, people could access that and make it more of a open building on the weekends and those types of things. If we have to add that up, if that's something that we view as important through this process that we feel helps address a deficiency, even though they might only say, well, we only reimburse for this much gym space, but you want this much gym space,
Sure.
that might be a decision that we make, and they would let us do that. That would be calculated in the reimbursement.
Mr. Chair?
Understand.
I thought the feasibility study that you were just talking about, I thought the point of that was at the end of that feasibility study, they basically tell you, make a recommendation as to whether you're just going to renovate or whether you're going to rebuild. But it sounds like you're saying even at the end of that process, we still have a choice. So like regardless of what that study says, we can still say if the study is kind of leaning towards renovation, we could still say, we'd really prefer to build a new school.
Yeah, I believe so, but I believe what they do is they're going to present it factually, right? So, if it's leaning towards renovation, why is that? Is cost the major factor?
Okay.
And then if we have a study that clearly says, well, hey, we think we can accomplish all your goals through this renovation addition that is substantially cheaper than a new building.
Right.
Well, it's going to be a hard sell to say, well, we just want to spend more money and get a shiny new building, right?
Yep.
But if that's, if when you're looking at it, it's, well, hey, for just a little bit more, we could have a full upgrade and not have to worry about, we can, those are different things you would decide. So I think it's more of, they explore those options and try to give us the facts about them. And then really, at the end of the day, it's going to be sort of, our decision of what do we think is the best solution for Clinton.
Okay. And I just had one last, more of a comment. It always struck me that Clinton's such a blue-collar town, and especially even serving on the school committee, to see every year kids leaving Clinton to go to schools that have a vocational program. And I've always thought that, like with the DNA of this town, that it would make sense we kind of like to consider ourselves a blue-collar town, that some sort of a in-district vocational option I think would be tremendous, and I think it would help us out a lot in this school choice battle that we have a tough time competing in. Is there any opportunity with this renovation or new building that we could scheme up some kind of a vocational component into that new building or into that renovated building?
I think possibly. I mean, I don't think we're never going to get like a giant plumbing lab like they have at Assabet, right? That's going to be beyond the scope of a middle school.
Correct.
Now, if you get a chance to look at some of these, and what I'll try to do, I'll try to send this electronically to Mr. Ward so he can maybe forward it to you so you guys can look at it with in better resolution if you want. But some of these proposals, they already have sort of their draft ideas in there, and I was surprised that a lot of them did sort of propose kind of almost making some of them, I think, could actually call it like an academic bridge, where it's like basically trying to build a new building next to the middle school and literally connecting it to the high school. And I think if that's, that might be an opportunity where if we were going to build maybe a robotics automation lab space that could be accessed by, our 7th and 8th graders maybe are going to use it a lot, but if we're connected to the high school, there's nothing saying that we couldn't have that sort of robotics automation vocational pathway that uses that same space.
Right.
And I think if we were able to do that, it would also allow us to look at different things like efficiencies of sharing staff, more opportunities for 8th graders to possibly take high school electives, those types of things. So, but then you run the risk of, if we're going to move the 4th grade up there, now you're saying, are we really going to have 4 to 12 in one big connected building? How do you design it to keep, 4th graders and 12th graders pretty much separated? So those are the different things you have to kind of look at. But I think there's an opportunity to design sort of these, I don't think I'd call them shops, but more kind of lab areas.
Maker spaces or something.
Yeah, that I think could be tailored around maybe like one that's tailored more around like life sciences, one that's tailored more around computer science, those types of things.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, like to compete head to head with some of the existing vocational schools would be difficult, but I do think we could do something, and I do think we could carve out our own like niche of more of like a higher end, computers and circuits and wiring and robotics and things that are like, I mean, I know I'm biased because I work in the engineering field, but they're like just begging for any type of engineering skilled,
Would you go to WPI or something?
Yeah. No, but like, if we, and that kind of leads me into my like second to last question though, is like, at what point in this process do we start like having those conversations? Because you mentioned the architect is going to start engaging in January, so I figured
that's it.
That's the time.
When we start engaging with the architect and we start doing those things, I think that's when we want to kind of tease out those ideas.
Okay.
And I think that's where we're going to get a sense of, what's the appetite for, connecting it? What are some of the priorities that shine through? Is it, hey, we want to make sure that the new building has an area that can be used as a fully functional emergency shelter? Do we want it to have a community type center feel? Do we want it to be really try to focus on these like maker spaces, lab areas that maybe the high school students could also access? I mean, those are all great, and I'd like to do them all, but then every one of those ideas probably have a dollar sign associated with it, right? So at the end of the day, we've got to figure it out, But I do think it's worth it. I mean, even though there's going to be a cap on the reimbursable costs, our reimbursement rate I think is right around 70%, and so it's not often you're going to be able to do a project and get reimbursed for at least 70% of the reimbursable costs, and if that's the case, I think we want to try to make sure we build the building we want, and because I don't know, with the high school and the elementary school being built in right around 2000, I don't know the next time there's going to be a building built in Clinton. So so this might be a good chance to try to say what are the things we think we're missing, and what are the things we can maybe try to address in this project, and then really just go after that.
My last question is, when we do have a plan that we agree to, we're moving forward, how long before that town meeting do you think is it appropriate, or do you have any plans to have any sort of a advocating for the project? Because it's going to be a big deal. I feel like we're probably going to want to take some time leading up to the town meeting to get the message out, educate people in town. I'm not sure, probably more of a question for legal counsel. I don't know if like our hands are tied, like we can't advocate for it because this is like a public thing, or I don't know how that works, but I would imagine at some point in time leading up to the town hall meeting, we're going to have some kind of a education kind of initiative.
Usually,
how early do you think that would have to happen?
I think a few months before.
Okay.
I think once it's tough because our target right now. And obviously, you never know, we're talking 18 months out, right? But our target is that June 2024 meeting. So you got to work and say, okay, well, that means we have to have a preferred schematic decided on and approved by the MSBA prior to that, right? So when we can fit in an MSBA meeting before then, I don't know exactly what that timing is going to be until we get closer to it. Mm-hmm. I'd say from the time we have a preferred schematic that the MSBA says is okay till the town meeting, we want to do as much outreach as we can, provide information, you know, and I think you're right. I mean, it's like from, you know, a lot of our shoes, it's gonna be more of providing information, right? And presenting it as, here's a cost analysis of if we do nothing and we're just gonna keep this building for 50 more years, and we build a building with a life expectancy of at least 50 years, here's what it's gonna cost over those 50 years, right? Yep. And that's, you know, that's more just presenting the factual stuff. But a lot of times, you know, in other, when I was involved in this in another district, you know, usually kind of engage other groups like PTA and those types of things, and they can kind of help with maybe distribution of flyers and Facebook and all that kind of stuff to try to get the information out there. There is a website that has been created. I've shared it a couple of times through our district newsletter. There's not a whole lot on there right now because we don't have a whole lot right now because we're still doing this, but we'll, as we start getting some more information put up on there, we'll try to publicize that website more so people can follow along if they're interested in where we are and what we're looking at, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Yeah, thanks for all the
Thank you
work
very
on
much.
this.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
All right, moving on to administrative business. We have the water sewer trash abatement for $406. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve water sewer trash abatement submitted by Superintendent of Public Works in the amount of $406 for the last billing cycle.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town hall use request for Clinton High School cheerleading practice. I think they're looking to use it again for location for Tuesday through Thursday during the months of November through February. And I think are they typically out by 6-ish?
Yeah, I think they do 3:30 to 6 or 6:30 max, but a lot of times they even end earlier than that. So, and they were a good tenant last year. They were very respectful of the building and our schedule when we did need it for other things. So the facilities director will keep in touch with the cheer team and make sure that everything runs smoothly. So.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the request of the Clinton High School cheerleaders to use the Town Hall auditorium as a practice location during the months of December through February, Tuesdays through Thursdays.
I'll second.
Any discussion? No. There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a private birthday party town hall use request for Saturday, January 28th, 2023, which would be for a private birthday party. The application was enclosed.
Is that a common thing? Have we done a lot of those?
Yeah, we don't do it all that often. I mean, there's been weddings we've had occasionally, but yeah, it's not real common, but we have done private events in the past. Yeah.
Are they bonded? Like, do they cover insurance, or like, I mean?
I think part of, and Mr. Ward's going to be able to answer this way better, but I know that from being on that subcommittee that we paused doing. Birthday party might not be that big of a problem, but I know we paused doing weddings because we just don't have any existing policy, and there's no expectation. And they had issues last time where the caterers just like left bags of trash in the auditorium, and it was kind of a mess. So I know that we did pause, but I don't think a birthday party is going to be as heavy as a wedding.
What if it has a one-day beer and liquor license, which would be next?
I still will, if it gets out of control, everyone can blame me for saying
Lancaster.
What?
Yeah.
And there would be insurance requirements as well, too. So.
Okay.
So Lancaster residents pay triple, right, the rate? Is that what usually is?
That's right.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve a request for the Town Hall auditorium for our private birthday party on Saturday, January 28th, 2023.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I wish them a happy birthday.
Yeah, just make sure we tell them to get rid of their trash.
If not, we know where they live. All right.
If not, no more Lancaster.
Any discussion? All right, there being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We can piggyback the request for a beer and wine license.
We should approve the birthday party, but deny the beer and wine request.
It'll be just like Lancaster.
See how much, see the diehard people that come to this party. Just kidding.
They're used
Sorry.
to it.
All right, for the same date.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve a request for a one-day beer and wine license in conjunction with the private birthday party being held in the Town Hall Auditorium on Saturday, January 28th, 2023.
I will second.
Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on to old and new business. Municipal electricity aggregation. Mr. Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to present this concept to the board. The Assistant Town Administrator had done most of the research on this. She wasn't able to be here tonight, so I just kind of wanted to put forward to the board to see if it's something that you think it might be an idea that we could continue to pursue. What this is back when the power companies deregulated and they went to separate supplier companies, the state provided an opportunity for cities and towns to do a aggregation load of electricity use for the whole community, and that the town would go out and do an RFP, purchase a supplier electricity at a price from a supplier for the whole town, and all properties in the town would be required to participate unless they formally opted out by filling out a form, turning in the form, saying that they didn't want to do it. So they consider it voluntary, but it's voluntary to opt out. But if you're not aware of it, or you don't pay attention to the bill, or you don't know that this happened, then you're going to be switched over to the town. We looked at it a number of years ago when it was early in the program, and at that time we didn't have kind of the policy support to go forward, namely because of that we're kind of taking away choice from the consumer. Oftentimes the price, because the companies are hedging on how many people are going to buy into that load. So if they put it at a low price thinking they're going to get the whole town, and half the town opts out, now they're locked into providing that service. So sometimes they hedge the price. Oftentimes they hedge the price higher than what the utility is paying for the standard rate, the default rate. So again, early on in the program, that didn't seem to be a lot of benefit. A lot of towns did go forward at the time because some communities were interested in getting more green energy, and their residents would be willing to pay more for green energy. So oftentimes the RFP would focus on that, not more so of trying to get the best rate out there. It was really trying to give options to the consumers to be able to buy different types of electricity. So we kind of didn't pursue it at that time. Recently, we've been having some inquiry by the public as to whether the town of Clinton could participate in this type of program, because now we're seeing a spike in rates. So when people have done it 2 years ago when the rates were low, maybe not, but now when the rates are high, now they're saying, oh, do you have a program that can get us lower rates? So it may be a time to take a look at it now again. It's going to take a while. It needs town meeting approval. You have to go to town meeting for it. So if it's something the board feels that we could continue to pursue and get more information to bring forward to something maybe for a spring town meeting. Currently, with us, the next agenda item I'll be talking about further, currently the town has a defined load pretty much of what we use for energy. So we can generally get better pricing without doing this aggregation. So we probably would opt out ourselves of this, because we have a big load and it's pretty guaranteed. So the companies would know that they could give us a rate for that, a better rate, where they're taking an unknown as to they don't know. If we do a 3-year contract, people can stay in for a year, get out for a year, get in for a year, get out for a year. So that rate is a little bit different. But I think it's something to at least pursue. Once we get town meeting approval, then we need state approval. And right now, the state was running about 2 years behind on giving communities approval from ones that they've already gone through the town side, and they're waiting for state approval. The state takes a long time to really scrutinize your plan because you are kind of mandating, not mandating because they do have the opt-out, but you're really kind of taking over the energy use by your residences and businesses in town. So obviously you have to do a lot of marketing, you have to really let people know what their choices are so that they can make a decision. But you know, if a lot of people don't look at their bill, or they don't look at the mailing, or they don't pay attention, then they're going to be locked into paying the rate that we're picking for them. So, but about half the communities in the state are doing it right now. And again, we have had a handful of people that have inquired about it because of the anticipated spike in the winter rates. I think in January, National Grid, the default rate is going up to 35 cents. So we're currently paying for town buildings 8.8 cents right now for our supplier rate. So compared to what it could be, I think it's going to be 17 cents in December and maybe up to low 30s and 35 in January. So hopefully after that, once they get through the winter spike, it obviously will come down coming forward into next year. But based on supply, the service right now, the tight supply chain, it's really driving the prices up higher. What's happening over in Europe, the pipeline here in New England pipeline to try to get more gas to this region, there's no quick fix into a year from now. So that's why prices are spiking. They'll come down after the winter spike, but they're still going to probably be much higher than we ever have for our 8.8 cents. The school is paying 10 point something. They're paying a little over 10 cents. We're paying a little over 8 cents. So we're probably not going to see those rates again for quite a while. So it's just kind of wanted to introduce the concept to the board to see if there was any opposition to us continuing to go further, to do more research, to bring maybe more of a project back to the board for consideration after the beginning of the 2023. And we can't do anything without town meeting approval anyways, but we can do more in-depth research on it if the board's okay with it.
Mr. Chairman, is it feasible for you also to include in the study, or maybe an individual study, a second study about becoming your own municipal, to be your own supplier, like a Sterling or a Holden or a Shrewsbury?
For us, well, I mean, we could certainly look into it, but years ago, when that decision was made, Clinton stayed with the utilities. So I could look into it, see whether we would have to buy out that infrastructure, or we would have to then build our own infrastructure. That I'm not sure of.
I'm just curious. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't never researched that issue, so certainly would be worth exploring to see if it's possible. Yeah, it may be such a huge cost that it may not be financially feasible, but I don't know that.
They pay a lot lower rates.
Yeah. So I'm certainly be willing to look into that as well too, to get more information on that.
Very good. Do you need a motion from us to move forward?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think if it's something that you feel it's a good thing to continue to pursue, that's mostly what we're looking for. I just didn't want, didn't want us kind of going down this road and doing, hours and hours of research if the concept wasn't something that the board had concerns about.
I'm in favor of getting more information, but my initial reaction is this just seems like it's going to be a lot of work.
Exactly.
And it seems like it's going to take up a lot of her bandwidth.
Yeah.
And it's for something that it's well-intended and it could save the community members money on their energy. But if, who knows what happens, my fear of worst case scenario is if we do something like this and then we take it over and then something out of our hands causes the energy prices to skyrocket, everyone's going to blame, they're going to be like, well, everything was fine before before the town took over our energy, and like now it's, that's my biggest fear. Is I think it's well intentioned, and I think it would help people out in the town, but geez, if anything out of our hands goes sideways, it's just like everyone's going to be like upset with us, and they're going to think that it's like this project that we did is the cause of it, and that's my only reluctance. But I'd be okay, I think, for at least getting a little bit more information, especially if you said about half the towns in the state are already doing it too.
About half the communities are doing it.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in doing like another, maybe a more formal presentation, and then I think at that point we should make a decision if we want to go further, so no one's wasting their time. But that's just, we have a lot of things that we want the assistant town administrator working on, and I just, my fear with this is it would just take up a huge chunk of her bandwidth. But maybe next time she's here, we can talk to her about that, and maybe she thinks differently, that she'd be able to handle it, kind of compartmentalize it fine without having it drag on to her other duties.
Yeah, exactly. No, I appreciate the comments, and those were some of the concerns when we looked at it years ago as to why we didn't go forward with it. So it is very accurate. But it is a lot of work. I think Angela indicated, just looking, researching and knowing what all the steps are, it is going to be a big project. And then after, if you do go forward with it, you generally will have a company or a consulting company or a broker or advisor that would kind of funnel the opt-outs and all of the customer inquiries. But oftentimes, their first call is to the town. As they feel the town is running this, they're going to call town hall, not that company. So cities like Boston and some of the big cities, they hire staff to handle this because it's just got so much inquiry from the public on it. So there is a lot to look at. Absolutely, it's nothing to go in too quickly on, but it's just something that towns are doing now, and the public was asking, so we wanted to at least explore it. So we'll look into it further and definitely pursue what the municipal electricity supplier could be and what we would need to do that as well. We can bring both paths back to the board and see if it's something.
I'm just curious. I know that I've never done it in the past, but I know that there's huge savings to the consumers in those towns and cities.
Right, because you can control it yourself.
Very good. All right, so let's segue into the electricity supplier renewal contract.
Good. Yep. So that segues into that. What I just kind of mentioned there were our current contract, which we did in 2020. It got us a really great rate of 8.8 cents. That is expiring in April of 23. So the advisor that we use right now, they're kind of pushing that we try to do something right now. They did go out and do some preliminary pricing for us, and I think they put that in the packet. I think it was about 14.4 or something, that they're looking at it on a 3-year, a 36-month contract. So still, what they're seeing of rates going to 35 cents, it certainly is a great rate at 14 cents. But compared to 8.8, it's going to be, probably a 60% increase on what we're looking at as well, too. So just if the board had any thoughts on whether, or if you wanted to kind of leave it to my direction, whether we should go forward with doing something now or wait till we get past this winter spike and see in the spring if rates get any better come into the spring. Because it's something that in order to get the best rates, we'd have to lock in for 2, 3, 4 years. So we don't want to lock in too high for that period of time. But if things keep getting worse after the winter, instead of 14 cents, it might be 18 or 20 cents in the spring. And no one has a crystal ball, but our advisor is not seeing any let up in those either supply chain issues or distribution issues here in New England. So they don't feel that we're going to, get anything back to 8 cents come the spring. It's probably going to be minimum 13, 14, 15 cents. Probably not less than that come springtime. So.
And you said that's 3 or 4 year contract? 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I think we probably would look at, the current one we did was 3 years, the one before that we did 3, I think the one before that was 4. 4 seemed a long time, it seemed like forever, waiting for it to expire. And if you see rates, coming down or fluctuating, 4 years is a long time. But in order to get the best rates, the kind of sweet spot is like 3 years. We could do a 1 year, but you're going to pay higher amount, and if the rates continue to stay high, then that whatever 17 cents or whatever that number that they gave us would only be for a year, and it would be better than what we're going to get through the winter. But then if instead of 14 cents come next spring, it might be 20 cents, 19 or 20 cents instead of 17. So they're suggesting that we go forward now with the 3-year deal, something around that 14 to 15 cent range. They think is probably the best we're going to do right now with our contract expiring. They're working with right now. They said they're working with communities that their contracts are expiring this month or in December or January, right where the tough time is, and they're looking at 18, 20, 22 cents for multi-year deals because their rates are coming up right in the high times. So I don't know if the members had any preference one way or the other, or if we just kind of wanted me to work with the advisor and try to do the best we can.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we authorize the town administrator to pursue renewing a contract with our energy supplier for all municipal buildings.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. Moving on to the fiscal year 2023 budget timeline. The chair of the Finance Committee has provided a high-level timeline and included key dates. Any thoughts on it? Let's just go there. If anyone had a chance to review it, if they didn't have a chance, but I would just like to make the recommendation that we hold the joint budget meetings for the larger departments like we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that went well.
Yeah, is this much different than last year? I mean, it seems...
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. I think the timeline...
I think what we had last year worked.
Yeah. I know there's still questions on our role, where we fit into this whole budget approval process, so I guess we can...
From the Finance Committee, or just?
Well,
in general?
it was just like the idea of if there's an item on there that, the board if the board votes on something as say a priority, the Finance Committee has the ability to choose not to
Prioritize it?
fund it.
Okay, fund it.
And, the discussion kind of revolved around, well, if there's other items that could kind of be trimmed from the budget to make room for something financially, that was kind of the bigger debate.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, if I may, statutorily, the Finance Committee presents budget to town meeting. So the selectmen, according to our bylaw, the selectmen are allowed to come up with their version of the budget, and the Finance Committee comes up with their version of the budget, and then hopefully for that budget subcommittee that you work out the details. But if you can't work them out, ultimately, it's the Finance Committee that presents the town meeting, and then you would have to get up and try to do an amendment on the floor of the town hall.
So and I don't want to beat this dead, but if so during the initial budget meeting, if there was something in there that the select board had agreed, that maybe we wouldn't fund that this year, can that department seek funding from FinCom still, even though?
Yeah, their budget submittal is what both boards get. So
Okay.
I think the Finance Committee and the Selectmen both work off of that. So, yeah, I mean, again, hopefully by working through that subcommittee and if it's a department under the board, select board that you feel strongly on, the finance committee will, be deferred to that opinion. However, I think ultimately, if they have the department submittal and they put it in their budget is the one that gets put forward. So, and then you would have to try to, during budget debate, get up and make the argument as to why you think that should not be included.
But can't any citizen do the same thing?
Oh, sure. Yep.
So we have we really don't have any authority with I honestly don't, the whole process kind of confuses me. I don't even know why we sit here and listen to people present their budgets if we don't have any authority to approve or disapprove them. So this whole process to me is just kind of bizarre.
Mr. Chair, on paper, that might seem to be the case, but I have to say, in the 5 years I've been doing this, that it's been very collaborative, and, for the most part, we figure out a way to get everybody taken care of, if not in the current year, then down the road. That's why I think getting the schedule out there and making sure we're having those joint meetings so that we don't get to June and get caught by surprise. So,
Yeah, and I agree, and I think, Mr. Chair, the bylaw, the town bylaw was set up to develop a collaborative process so that both boards do have input, but the state statute is what gives the authority to the finance committee throughout the state to be the ones that present the budget to town meetings. So, but the town at least tried to create this process where both boards would have, some more input.
I don't have I think it makes complete sense for the finance committee to approve the budget. What blows my mind is that they seem to have the authority to go in there and pick apart the budget. Like, it seems like they would have the authority to tell Dr. Meyer, we don't want you to hire a principal, would rather you hire 3 teachers. And he couldn't do a thing about it. It's like the people that have the actual understanding of what the needs of their department are, like those boards come to us, we work with those boards. We have a better understanding of what the needs of those boards are, in my opinion, and this kind of came up with the assistant town administrator, where there was a time when we were working to get that in the budget, and it really wasn't sure if it was going to get in there or not, and that's how it kind of sparked this question of like, well, I can understand the finance committee saying, well, you have to be limited by this amount. But I was shocked that they would have the ability to say, like, no, we're specifically we don't agree to fund that specific position. For an appointed board to have that authority over an elected board that works closely with these departments, it just kind of like blows my mind. But like everyone says, 99 times out of 100, we seem to always come to an agreement and move forward, but it just seems it's just like ripe for, if there is a disagreement, it just seems like that whole process just doesn't seem like it's very well thought out, that's all.
All right, noted. Very good. Any other discussion on that? All right, moving on. I'm gonna move to table the meeting norms discussion. I wanted to include something in the package, just a review, which I did not get in there, so we can hold off on that. And then moving on to the annual tree lighting event. So this past weekend we had the 10th annual caroling and tree lighting event. The 2022 tree lighting and caroling event was held on Saturday, November 26th. Santa and Mrs. Claus were on hand to celebrate. This event was a great way for the community to come together to kick off the 2022 holiday season. The George Bailey Award was presented by the Clinton Area Chamber of Commerce and Discover Clinton. Congratulations, David Drzenzski, on receiving this award. The committee would also like to thank the Clinton Fire Department, the Clinton Emergency Management, Facilities Department, Clinton Parks and Recreation, Clinton Downtown Coordinator, Clinton Area Girl Scouts, Clinton Select Board Office, Clinton Council on Aging, and a special thank you to Chris Nanoff, Christine Graves Zencraft, PJ Chamberlain, Jameson Breyer, and Dan Seaver. Thank you.
That was a great event.
It was awesome. Indeed. It was. That was
Tons of people. And a lot of them said they were going downtown for dinner after,
They will hit the foot traffic.
right?
Any committee reports? None from you, Mr. Chair.
Nope.
They're being done. All right. We will be leaving our open meeting and heading into executive session under Article 6 for the Oxford Court lease negotiations update and under Article 3 for union negotiations update. Our next meeting is on December 14th. I will accept a motion to exit.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
And now I will accept roll call to enter an executive session. We will not be returning to public session afterwards.
Ed DeVault, aye.
Sean Carrigan, aye.
Julie Peruce, aye.
Mary Dick, aye.
Matt Kobus, aye. Thank you very much.
Holiday Pops this Saturday, plenty of balcony seats still available.